great show today, got the gut-brain barrier breaching, where that is. Who's not got that, actually? I mean, have you got a tight junction fit there? How often is it that people are going to eventually sort of end up with all sorts of symptoms otherwise? So it's certain that with multiple sclerosis or any cognitive type of degeneration, you have a vascular hypoxia, meaning lack of oxygen, and you have hypocapnia, which is lack of carbon dioxide. And you have this overall condition where those gases aren't being transported like they should be. So your red blood corpuscle, because it's not a cell, okay, it's far more than just a gas transporter, like modern medicine has said, far more if you look into this work. Okay, so it's really, you've got a injury where anything was or something needing to be repaired. And you could see a red blood corpuscle pulling up where that is, and the double spores which it's made of are starting to granulate and tremble and bud and sporulate, and the double spores go toward what's needed, where your body is having some homeostatic type of condition to correct. And the red blood corpuscle and the double spores of that can, by aggregating, fusing and differentiating, reverse differentiate from being in a red blood corpuscle and aggregate, fuse and differentiate into what's needed. Okay. So the gut has to have its seal, you see, and implantable life colloid like that's found in the aged almond Gouda could cause you to do far better, of course, than having had a suffered terrain where you're housing fermentive life colloid within the intestine and all of the metabolite that is from its excretion and what have you getting into the body. And so that's kind of what the show's a little bit about today. So life colloid are spore, of course. That's colloid of life that have aggregated, fused and differentiated into a spore, and then that spore aggregates with another spore to become a double spore, and this is the building block of all the organelle interior of your body. You've got 1,500 of these shoulder up to each other, these double spores, and you're looking at a red blood corpuscle. Okay. So life colloid, where it's similar types, where the gut is, and it's composing a life colloid or mat or film, and so it's examples of like Staphylococcus aureus could have been there, Escherichia coli, E. coli could have been there, Pseudomonas aeruginosa could have been there, and so life colloid really many, of course, all come from two basic life colloid. One is mucorrhizmosis and the other is Streptococcus niger. And everything that you could see where you are comes about as a result of a life cycle and a pleomorphism from these two life colloid themselves. So there can be, you can have heard about these being positively charged or negatively charged, sort of gram-positive, gram-negative life colloid. And where the film is there and never not, it's not supposed to be disturbed. It's not supposed to have inflammation where the gut is. And it's the reason Gouda was made originally. I could see what could be the very beneficial things that you could have, like life colloid and this black cabbage truffle and the Floragrow product, which can assist to help cause the terrain to be restored. So if that bridge is sealed, and you've got a good tight junction fit there, good, you've got implantable life colloid. It's where the Gouda is and the Floragrow and the BCT and life colloid product where Jubb cell rejuvenation is. Okay, to give you an idea. So keeping company of like-mindedness where your intestine is, and yourself, of course, it's really you're not having travelled in any direction that only dark or light existed. It really is your world not to have other than lay parched, which, laying parched and lacked, where plasma is, or excessive, it's saliva or dry. It's really the enzymatic life colloid. It's living where you are in a mutual lived existence. So you're really finding yourself looking back asleep where the Garden of Eden is, and your lips not parched, and you feel quenched instead. You feel satiated. And dreaming could have taken you more to life. Life begets life, and otherwise dead begets dead. So could you see yourself running toward Eden instead? You see inside, which is the garden that you're wrapped around, and it's really you and the water of life. And afterward, a distance otherwise could have been where you were running, of course, and you ran away from what you should be doing. But any boasted dream where your heart is, and you're bringing everyone to the half of your own self, where you're more light, where your altar is, and you're stopping excessive protein and stopping the flesh and the egg and the bean and live food that's prepared ever more from fresh produce. It's really made more easy for you to digest. And we could have been talking a bit about nitrogen in other shows a little. So you're stopping all of that nitrogen which parasites just begging for that nitrogen. So if you clean up your terrain, there's no more extraneous nitrogen where it shouldn't be. You're fortifying your terrain, and it's remarkable. You're adding a little exercise and flexibility and cleansing and these sorts of things. And it's to practice more of eye awareness, where whole brain patterning more is in your life. So if you're keeping a proper glycopacking, that's the covering that's around all the cells, and that glycopacking really is a pure, clean hydrogen. When we talk about hydrogen, we're really talking about sugar, because that's what hydrogen is, basically. And things have got to be broken down to that small element, okay? So it shouldn't really be mixed with protein and modified with fat, which you could see on the glycans of cells. It should be clean and not all mixed up with all that material too much, which shows aging otherwise. So clean, where your life colloid colony is wrapped around the cells. You've got an auto-produced polymer matrix, and it's like a polysaccharide, and it's made out of life colloid. So even what clots your blood, fibrin, is a life colloid, and it grows a vine. So you have to think a little more like this. All the mechanics that's going on is done by life colloid, and that has to be in its living state. So excessive protein, yes, it's going to interfere with that. Adding extra nitrogen, we've been talking about it. And all these injectables, which could have not RNA in it, they also have larger sized material in chromatography to have DNA even there. So this is terrible. This is going to cause blood clots and what have you. So bacteria, mold, fungus, and yeast, all part of one family and a life cycle, and got a lot of sediment in there. Maybe, it's just going to be broken down into these dysbiotic sort of life colloid. So the life colloidal film is caused where persistent sort of infection could have been, and someone could become resistant, you see, to fungus. So this EHBTE is really fungal-like, and antibiotics don't really disinfect. Why? Because it's just about a bacterial war. It doesn't do anything to the mycoplasma, which doesn't have a cell wall, and is that managing fungus? No. Okay. So this is probably the really good point which we talk about today, just a bit to keep in mind. So in a JC quanta, you've got, that's a Jubb constant, you've got a cavities resonance, and you've got, this is conducted across the vacuum. You've got superposition, you've got critical timing, you've got all this performed where the life colloid bacterial community is in cells where they're communicating with each other. And what is flesh and egg and bean has been a bit of a leg stuffer, excessive, So changes with the terrain is so that it's other than able to be able to communicate perfectly and have proper quorum sense system. Communication really is based upon what's conducted, where a signal is, you see. So in Jubb cell rejuvenation, you've got product which life colloid, the film that you have, it assists to help condition. And so natural plant compound that has substances that are halogenated types of phenazines, which compound and in the nutraceuticals that are developed, it's specific to brain nuclei of cells, and outside of where all this is the biofilm and clearing away and eradicating what's not meant to be there, fungus and mold, and metabolite of it. So natural methods really involve using a cleansing program and protocol to rid all of that slime and mold and fungus from the body and from its life colloidal mat. So it's certain that plant-based or a compound found, of course, in products. Well, you could look at Oregon grape root and fireberry, whole ranges of things here, natural, like Mormon grass, that's astragalus, or bare root, and then, of course, for herbs, where people are, where clove is, and essential oil like eucalyptus. You've got live food, of course, where you've got chopped cilantro and parsley and garlic and turmeric and ginger and a whole range of things just like this. These are all elements which could help you, but dead food isn't going to. So excessive protein and mycotoxin that comes from that, it's the excrement. And when you look at flesh under the microscope, why can't you just have a look at that and see all the wrigglers that are there? And then have a look at a piece of vegetable and see how there's nothing wriggling there. So the extracellular matrix, which is a polymer, it could all be loaded up with xenoestrogen, and we've had some podcast that talks about this. So glycocalyx, which are these brush borders that you have right down where the capillaries are, to keep what's larger inside and disperse the plasma. Those are all could be really very interfered with xenoestrogens, which are really endocrine disruptors. So these endocrine disrupting compound mimic estrogens, and the glycocalyx, it's carbohydrate rich in its layer, and it's got sulfur in it as well. And the cell's exterior and its biofilm, though, where a community of life colloid microbe could be adhering to the cell surface where this is. And what's that? Is that proper, or is it just made up out of dead sediment that you've consumed? That because it just breached the blood-brain barrier. It breached your gut barrier. So mycotoxin, which is the excrement of what that material will break down into as a ferment and mold, is part of it. The tissue really becomes neoplastic. It's sort of melted away overnight whilst you sleep on Jubb cell rejuvenation, because you're improving the brown fat cells to be triggered, and you're helping correct the terrain of your body. Otherwise, it's really looking at a disrupted estrogen receptor and xenoestrogen certain, and the composition of the function of your glycocalyx, which is this brush border down where your capillary is, and getting better, proper circulation. So Jubb cell rejuvenation makes blood hygienic. It raises albumin. And to do that, you have to reduce the extraneous of the plasma of protein so that there's room for albumin to be produced by Kupffer cells. So it's otherwise you've got a lot of multiple gut life colloid and the byproduct as excrement, as mycotoxin. It's linked to nervous system extracellular matrix. So what's surrounding the nerve cell is regulating itself. It's supposed to, and it has effect that's not caused by any single life colloid yet, various mycotoxin life colloid species that could be found in the blood. Never not. So it's influencing the gut-brain axis where bacteria-derived molecule could be. And the Gouda is amazing because it's a really only rich source of implantable life colloid that's selected for the purpose of what this is. My background more is, neurobehavior physiologist, and I've got to go beyond the brain to get to be the whole picture, and so you must. So Jubb's research methodology is a sample of convenience, of course, and lactobacillus like L. salivarius, L. plantarum, derived evermore where extracellular vesicle is, where life colloid bacteria is. You've got L. salivarius and L. plantarum, which is the ones that implant, and their excrement is something useful to us. It doesn't have any excrement which is not useful to us, you see, for cleaning the brain and keeping the brain clean, like selenium glutathione peroxidase is an example. So you're looking at wherever somebody could become an expert where this is, you have to have reviewed what the literature is, where the world is, and you can look and see what experts agree. And in this research, of course, me, this father, and what insight new that I've got for you, that's how blood is formed, and that is far more than just a gas transporter. You've got a massive benefit to clean up your brain, and you've got these implantables that produce no excrement, and what they do produce is something which is not an excrement but a milk for us, like selenium glutathione peroxidase. So Jubb cell rejuvenation is very specific. You've got life colloid found in the Gouda that's especially designed evermore for this purpose, and so you've got an increased derived neurotropic types of factor, brain-derived neurotropic factors, which express the cultured neuron, where this is all supported life colloid, where you've got a mutual lived assistance, and the growth of neuron, which influence your brain's recovery, requires you to detox, okay, and bring nutrition in. Everything else missed the bus. Okay, so research which is valid, of course, very satisfying because you've got a construct, yes, which you're talking about. You must have some sort of contextual validity, yeah? And reliable. It could be repeatable. So otherwise, Jubb process is a sample of convenience, and it's really looking at what's designed evermore to give you atoms, for instance, that you need, like carbon 1 and 3 hydrogen atoms, like which is methylation does. So ubiquitin is a life colloid which is specific in product that we have, which is when it's applied, it repairs DNA, and what's faulty, it can repair DNA and turn neoplasm around. Neoplasm is just a simple fetal endoblastic cell that's in an undifferentiated state, and a state which is kind of using aerobic glycolysis, which is fermented protein and fat in the cytoplasm, which is the material, the fluid that's inside the cell. And so it's exerting that, and could be not too efficient, which it isn't, and it excretes lactic acid, plentiful, and after a moment in time, that's sort of fermenting, and this is really what neoplasm is. So in the late 70s, of course, Annie, Jubb, and myself saw quite a bit how you turn cells on and off through methylation, and how hydrolysis was so important. And so you've got efficient energy expenditure instead. And I saw really how neoplastic condition could be arrested. I saw how to turn neoplasm around where the protein, and I talked about this being a protein disease. Have you picked up a copy of Jubb's Cell Rejuvenation or Secrets of an Alkaline Body? That might be good that you did. So you've got Jubb cell rejuvenation, which comes about to cause you to have your terrain be more corrected. And it reduces certain amino acid that stimulates autolysis. Where you reduce those amino acids, you're stimulating autolysis. And so the body could break down the things at which it needs to, including proteins, which control otherwise epigenetically in a wrong way. And it's linked more where you're doing this to proper cell respiration and cell growth and development. So boosting your normal array of pancreatic function, you've got brown fat cells which become active more in this program, and you've got glucagon, the hormone, which is needed to raise blood sugar properly. Otherwise, if you're not doing live food, you're certain that you probably don't have any of those things that what we just talked about above in proper stead. Instead, you've got ferment material, neoplastic condition, and it's gone, but otherwise it could be just in remission, and the cells, which would have been multiplying uncontrollable, you're guiding everything back to be more in a non-neoplastic state. So Jubb cell rejuvenation begins vitally with a process where you're reprogramming these stayed normal types of respiration, which should be. So it's a condition which goes into remission more likely, where the neoplastic condition could be compared more to something which would be not gone through this process. That would be called sort of untreated neoplastic types of condition. So scientists could look at the work, of course, and see that neoplastic cells carry a genetic memory and their original healthy state, which is switched back, you see, to the proper conditions of oxidative metabolism instead. So similar strategies where leukemia type of a neoplasm and what's encouraged to mature back to harmless cells that no longer are in a state of excess. So what research is, you could say this area and subject is sort of opening doors more for therapeutics, which could help fix neoplasm instead of destroying everything with other types of process, which is chemo and radiation. So it's developed ever more where you've got a gene-based approach to change the pancreas from its neoplastic condition to clear away everything that's from its extracellular matrix. So live food really is Jubb cell rejuvenation, ridding stone and improving the pancreatic function. And over a 42-day, it's a bit of a game changer. So cell rejuvenation really is clearing away neoplastic condition. And you could really back this up because you could imagine what success is going where this is working for you. Live food really is, at the end of your day, showing great shifts ever more in what energy that you have. And so live colloid fuel slows or fasting. It clears up neoplastic growth and stops its spreadedness. And so what's suggested is really that a lack of a proper full phenolic ester and terpenes and all of these things, which is packed with exotic nutrient like delta tocotrienol and ubiquitin and things, you see. Which, how are you going to get this otherwise? Not necessarily in a proper, just domesticated diet, especially dead food. So, bringing resveratrol and omega-3s, which aren't oxidized but have antioxidant with it, and and polyphenols. You've got life colloid and life food, which is reducing neoplastic condition and shrinking all of that, and food nutrient reducing the inflammation, and you've got a boosted cellular health. So it's the first of its kind as an approach like this. Tens of thousands, though, have passed through and done the program and transmutation and rewired their gene and proper RNA activity. So it's really not a gimmick, not a fad, not time-worn or a hype. And it's really science showing you more nature and how you can bolster your body's defenses. So Jubb cell rejuvenation rids stone and plaque from the body, of course, and life colloid, the glycofilm and all the material that's packed there full of other substances. You've got indoles otherwise, where this program is, and it's packed full of natural goodies. So life food is really packed by nature, and it's natural, that it's just intending to work to eco-sterilize tissue and producing blood, of course, really from a nativity of an anti-neoplastic passiform being present, meaning what you could call an antibiotic, but God help us, it's not. It's way more, because it's anti-mold and anti-fungus as well. So having something like honey and lemon, which you could look into, very beneficial, and the power of hydrolysis and methylation. And did you do that? Well, when you do, you're going to have success. You could happen to have shifted everything by moving more toward a life food diet and learning what this is. It's nutrient that suddenly becomes a little bit more like the butter of something that's a fresh pressed hazelnut, macadamia. You've got amylase, the enzyme, protease and lipase enzymes. So enzymes missing typically where dead food was. And what about you don't have any lipase? That's an enzyme. You don't think that that's going to stop and cause you to have all sorts of acetylcholine esterase problems and excessive acetylcholine or not enough. And these are things which really cause dementia and also high blood pressure. So enzymes really a handful for pecan or hazel or acorn. It's really tremendous where the properties are arresting, where you've got neoplastic growth, blocking and stopping that and giving you blood-borne inhibitors. So it's a massive impact that you could keep going without life food. I mean, you could have cleared away everything, you see. That's non-ecological. That's, not something just snacking on your body like it has been. So if you listen to these podcasts, you're going to hear things which is continuously reinforcing various learning which you should have. So it's eating flesh and a relentless habit of that. That's a large percentage of parasite that really doesn't get broken down properly, which you can have heard about in our podcast. It causes toxoplasmosis. Your tissue and body can break down into, bacteria, mold and fungus and parasitical condition, where all of that could have just crawled through someone's brain. If you're really looking into all of it, you could see that the largest percentage of parasite, of course, and that's not broken down properly, is called toxoplasmosis. And it definitely does have these pleomorphic stages of its development. Toxoplasma gondii, you can have heard in our podcast that some over 30% or more of blood around the earth pretty much is infected. How come you haven't looked at it under a microscope? You see? So if you look into flesh under the microscope, you're going to see a lot of bacteria, mold and fungus and yeast, and cattle and sheep and deer all have contact with feces today, which they wouldn't ordinarily, and ingesting feces, which they wouldn't usually. And it's just fecal matter which really isn't broken down properly. And so parasite where one's life is, you've really got known sorts of predators, and most well-known really is where somebody doesn't have any fear now of any predator. And so this is what these toxified mycotoxins can do to change the way that you are looking at risk, for instance. So schizophrenia and malaise and repression, dissociation, and homicidal or suicidal sort of ideation and anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, all is related to what we're talking about and could be healed up. And cognitive impairment. So parasite really want somebody just to eat flesh, no question about it, and eat more bean. It loves nitrogen, which we could have been hearing about. It doesn't really care too much for you to make any enzymes to digest anything much. It's a similar protein that's formed where neoplasm is. Life colloid kind of switched over to aerobic glycolysis. Like if you listen to our shows, you're going to be learning about this. It's no longer really having oxidative metabolism. And so is it that something that you know that's extracellular parasite? That could you be looking at what living blood is? So as you could see, if you've got mold or fungus or yeast in your body, if you do, it's because you've got excessive protein. Toxoplasma gondii just loves and needs nitrogen, okay? And all of our shows really go into this quite a bit. It's otherwise you've got a rancid fat that's making up myelin sheath around your nerve cell. That's wrong. And what happens when that breaks down? But it's a semiconductive material which information is sent along long before a nerve action potential is sent and seen. You've got a readiness potential sent. And what happens when that myelin sheathing doesn't exist like it should? And the fats are not being broken down properly. The body is, there's no enzyme to be able to help with what that is. And so you're moving a brain ever more to dementia and Alzheimer's, and rancid fat consigned ever more like animal fat to places of your brain is not going to be helpful. Fat of the brain itself could be missing various links like it does where Alzheimer's is. And if you're just blocking one enzyme that's left over, not cleared up, you can restore brain immunity more. So it's assumptions about fat. Have you ever heard about that? Probably not, because you've got a hypochondriac about something which has no matter whatsoever and subject bias. So Alzheimer's disease really reveals that you've got excessive fat stored in the brain's immune cells and what have you, and it's actively driving neurodegeneration. Why? Because it's blocking proper enzymes where lipase is to be able to clear things away properly. So where immunity is, you've got key immune defenders, and the brain could become overloaded with fat and excessive nitrogen and exposed to toxic amyloid beta plaques, which impair the cell's, the neuron's capacity to clear protein properly. You've got too many deficiencies where you've got a dead food diet to talk about. But just to give you a bit of an idea, like lipase enzyme, which is the enzyme to break fat down and lipids. And so you've got one enzyme that's this DGAT2, which it fails to degrade. And what happens when that fails to degrade? You've got plaque. And so if you don't have an enzymatic deficiency and you haven't lost all the zeta potential because you just ate dead food, could you see the direct microglia store fat and see a better, good picture of rather the use of live food and energy and effectiveness and silencing where a brain's neural defense needs to be as a mechanism, and you're no longer suffering from anesthetization of nerves. So live food really attention evermore as an enzyme, okay? And to be able to block and degrade that DGAT2 molecule and have proper cell rejuvenation because you're restoring the fat metabolism and the pancreas and Brunner gland. So microglia, of course, function where Alzheimer models are and enable cells to resume clearing harmful plaque if you're improving markers for your brain health. So it's discovering really what's being introduced to you, which is not a proper fat that we're supposed to have, where something it doesn't have its enzyme. It's being cooked and coagulated and doesn't have its proper three-dimensional structure anymore as an essential fat, for instance. So it's a therapeutic focus of more targeting things to clear away the amyloid tau protein. And Jubb cell rejuvenation really is a great instruction that you could follow afterward to have a proper true healing therapeutic. Over the 42 days, you're getting a bit of a paradigm shift and you're understanding even more the cellular root of Alzheimer. So our amyloid be showing lipid droplets, sort of mediated microglia toxicity where the blood is. You've got enzymatic resistant fats, and fats oxidize, and oxidized oils, and all of this creates a response that's this enzyme that's not being degraded properly, this DGAT2, which is supposed to be not present like it should be there and be degraded. Otherwise, you've got dementia, you've got minimal brain dysfunction, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, you've got these conditions that show up. So it's a bit of a stolen attention. You could be focused ever more to clear away your dead food combo. If you're doing that, then you've got much more stress reduction. You've got an action which is supporting more social behavior instead. And if you've not heard about Jubb cell rejuvenation, it really is a focus of not having that fatty acid deposit where the pancreas or gallbladder is, and usually the sinusoids of the liver. It all has to be cleared away. Otherwise, you've got calcium phosphate, calcium carbonate, sort of stone, and you've got all of that where the cholesterol is. But it clears this up. So over time, it's probable for somebody to be able to see a bigger picture about everything. It's really not an antibiotic, which is full of solvent. It's magneton, which could have been made caustic from mycotoxin. It isn't just mycotoxin, but yet what's slowly wrong, overall, and body allowing things to break down and healthy tissue becomes broken down because it's not in the proper terrain and becomes more neoplastic. So it's really, what's the approach that you've taken? Or, gosh, there hasn't been an approach. Oops, that's going to be not good. So co-resistant genes where heavy metal is, you've really got cross-resistance, you've got co-regulated types of heavy metal, which can signal, activate genes to become more resistant to a metal. And all these effects are going on where somebody could have had antibiotic. So it's really the gut life colloid which has to recover, and you've got to have proper connective tissue and things. How do you heal up? Where what's going on has impacted acetylcholinesterase, which is the primary neurotransmitter that connects your brain to your muscle and your body. And if this system is functional again, which you could just learn to add a little alpha lipoic acid and help heal all of this up, because that's the enzyme and fat and lipid that could help you be able to clear up what's extraneous. Otherwise, we've just sort of said, I guess, above a little, that an anesthetic type of effect goes to sensation. So you've got these Krauss corpuscle, which we've talked about, and erogenous sensation could have been anesthetized. You've got frequencies, of course, which have been interfered with, which if you listen to other podcasts, you could hear a bit more about this. You've got Jubb cell rejuvenation that really is bringing in life food, and this is your focus on nutrient that's needed to make neurotransmitter. And in particular, you've got to have these trans-chained fats, which, like succinic acid that's made in the intestinal tract, it's a bloodborne inhibitor that blocks the expression of, double spore transmutating itself into mold or fungus or yeast. So for brevity, somebody could just discuss the element which is echo-sterilizing more the brain and extracellular space and glycopacking. A lot of ingredient really needs to cause you to be able to make neurotransmitter. And so this is this Jubb product, which is designed to help where this is. So nutrient, where the brain is, manifests its physiological state dependency, where associatedness is more to neurology that would have been obsessive instead, more compulsive disorder, hyperactive. And the method that's being used here is deductive and inductive to have a bit of convenience and whole brain function training. And you can see these symptoms which has been talked about disappeared. So this is not just a single gut life colloid metabolite that's responsible for obsessive compulsive disorder, though there are certain that's existed and needs to be cleared up. It's looking at a cocktail of mycotoxin that's got multiple metabolite and fermentive. It's just a bit of a dream as a cocktail for wrong terrain. And so the pathway that really is being simple so the immune system can function proper is stop all the conditions which is causing it to really have trouble trying to figure out what's going on. Your nerve force, this life colloid, really is you mining your gut to gut your mind, and whatever leading candidate could be is these short chain fatty acids and succinic acid, and the productive metabolite that relates to manifesting properly neurotransmitters like serotonin and glutamate. So if you're not having live food, where are you getting fiber? You need fiber because it's going to break down into butyrate. Otherwise, you've got a butyrate deficiency. You're not making that acid. So the deficiencies of butyrate really is linked to compromised intestinal barrier function and impaired microglia of your brain. It's homeostasis. So otherwise, you're looking at neuroinflammation, which is always seen where you have obsessive compulsive disorders. So succinic acid that's found in the Gouda and other fermented food and things, is it giving you a bloodborne inhibitor that blocks mold, fungus, and yeast, and it mediates metabolite, you see? So you don't have obsessive compulsive disorder. So it's really a balance where disability, life colloid could have been seen in the response what you have to this, and to hold back the double spore where the blood is from aggregating, fusing, and differentiating into life colloid, which use aerobic glycolysis instead of oxidative metabolism. So dead food consumption really has no zeta potential, none. So that's not a pretty picture. Has hardly any aromatic amino acid either. Ooh, that's not right. Because you need that to transport mineral, especially phenylalanine, tryptophan, and tyrosine. Okay. So life colloid help you produce dopamine and serotonin in the gut. You've got these life colloid we've talked about above, and lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, and all of these produce serotonin and life colloid terrain. If it's altered, it's disrupted, and that process hasn't been existing. I know that our shows above have sort of really been about excessive nitrogen, and just to, I guess, wrap things up a little, of course, you've got sound, which your voice is. You've got these things that all change when you move towards just having a monophasic diet, eating once a day, and suddenly your voice is much more clear. You've got teachings, which couldn't it be that you look into the podcast about life music? It's very deep rabbit hole, of course. We've been talking a bit above in podcasts about sculpting the body to change the mind and state, and synchronizing where the brain is. And how can you have anything if you've just got a build-up of this nitrogen? And so parasites, they just love to hang out, and they can confuse the immune system. And they do that by releasing nitrous oxide. And so the nitric oxide level where the body is astonishing. It should be, certain percentage, but the simple act of having dismissed proper habit that you should have, it really is how substances are released by life colloid to mimic the body some and to cause it to be confused so it doesn't get after the parasite. And so as these parasites release nitrous oxide more, and to escape from it all. So your normal breathing really is a result of an oxygen-rich blood and nourishing the tissue, and it's strengthening more your immune system. You're getting a little sunshine every day, so you're getting proper vitamin D. And it's really, you don't really need to have any training equipment or anything much, but yet to have a lengthened inspiration and really be able to have closed your mouth ever more gently. But where your voice is and everything, you're going to hear and feel and see that this is really improved a lot. Anyway, I think that we've got to cover as we come up more to our next podcast really is all about pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, and things that's like this. And being able to clear those things away, and what effect could these things have had where neurology is and physiology. Anyway, I hope you've really enjoyed this show today that we've had. We've got some more exciting information that's coming up, like what we just talked about. Anyway, I hope you're having a really wonderful day as you're getting this podcast today, and looking forward to catching up with you in another podcast. Love you.